Thanksgiving, the early settlers discovering America, the Pilgrims and Indians coming together, a celebration of the American spirit. Or it used to be. Now it's just a pit stop on the racetrack to Christmas. There she is. Ready for some Midnight Madness?
So ready. Not to give anything away, but since I have a job now and some potato money to burn, some people are gonna be getting some pretty great presents this year.
Let me help you with that, Mom.
You really want to go shopping the night before Thanksgiving?
No choice, Mike. The Pioneer Galaxy Mall has moved Black Friday up to Wednesday. Tonight, everything is 60% off. We wait till Friday, it's only 30% off. If I keep talking to you, it's going to cost me another 10%.
This year, a lot of these stores aren't even waiting until Black Friday. Target, Macy's, and Kmart are opening on Thanksgiving Day, and they even have a terrible new nickname for that day.
Stores keep opening earlier and earlier for Black Friday. So early, in fact, that it's become Brown Thursday. Brown Thursday is the new Black Friday.
Are you ready for Brown Thursday?
Brown Thursday.
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 Black Friday is like, it's become Brown Thursday.
No, it hasn't. It hasn't become anything. This is not happening, by the way. We are not calling it Brown Thursday. It already has a name. Its name is Thanksgiving. That's the name of the day. It's not Brown Thursday. We can't let this become a thing. We really...
The title of my message is, Have We Forgotten Thanksgiving? You know, one of my favorite movies is the movie Shenandoah. And that movie is the story of a man named Charlie Anderson. It's played by Jimmy Stewart, one of his best roles ever. He plays a widowed farmer who lives in Shenandoah, Virginia, with his 6 sons and 1 daughter during the Civil War. And Charlie has no intention of getting involved in that silly war between the North and the South. But when his youngest son is taken prisoner by soldiers from the North, Charlie gets involved. Early on in the movie, there's a scene where they're sitting at the family supper table, and he's praying a prayer, and here's what he says. Lord, we worked hard to plant the crops and water and fertilize and cultivate and harvest the crops. We wouldn't have food on this table without our hard work and sweat and sacrifice. But just the same, Lord, we say thanks. The contemporary version of that is an episode of The Simpsons where Bart Simpson prayed, Dear God, we paid for all this stuff ourselves, so thanks for nothing. The tragedy is that Charlie Anderson and Bart Simpson represent more people than we'd like to admit. Thanksgiving doesn't come naturally to a self-centered, self-absorbed society. I noticed this week the runaway winner of Oxford Dictionary's word of the year this year is selfie. Now it beat out twerk, and we're thankful for that. It was estimated people spent more than $7 billion on Halloween this year. $7 billion with a B. The scariest part is that adults spent more money on their costumes than on kids. $2.6 billion spent on adult costumes. $2 billion spent on candy. Halloween cards, which is a growing trend. You send a card to wish someone a happy Halloween. Brought in over $260 million. Most popular costumes, Duck Dynasty and zombies. You know, when I read that, I thought, now, aren't those the same thing? I mean, think about it for a moment. Don't shave, don't bathe, don't brush your teeth. It's kind of the same result, isn't it? The sun had barely gone down on Halloween, and people were already putting up their Christmas decorations and playing Christmas music. Advertisers weren't talking about Black Friday, but now the hot news is how many stores will be open on Thursday. In fact, now there's a battle to jump the gun there and actually invite people to come in early Thursday morning to avoid the rush. And it just left me thinking, whatever happened to Thanksgiving? When nothing was open, except for a few select gas stations, a 7-Eleven here and there, and maybe a Blockbuster Video, but that was it. People were with their families, and this was a day to be thankful. Giving thanks, it seems, has taken a back seat to everything else. In our text this morning, the friends of Jesus have gathered together to thank Him. In John chapter 11, Jesus came to Bethany for the death of Lazarus, but now here in chapter 12, He's coming prior to His own death. And verse 1 tells us He's come 6 days before the Passover, which means in less than a week, He will die on the cross for the sins of the whole world. And verse 2 tells us there's a dinner being held in honor of Jesus. We pick up the story in verse 1 of John chapter 12, and would you stand for the reading of the word this morning? John chapter 12, verse 1. 6 days before the Passover, Jesus therefore came to Bethany, where Lazarus was, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. So they gave a dinner for him there. Martha served, and Lazarus was one of those reclining with him at table. Mary, therefore, took a pound of expensive ointment made from pure nard and anointed the feet of Jesus and wiped His feet with her hair. The house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. But Judas Iscariot, one of His disciples, he who was about to betray Him, said, "Why was this ointment not sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor?" He said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief, and having charge of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was put into it. Jesus said, "Leave her alone, so that she may keep it for the day of my burial. For the poor you always have with you, but you do not always have me." You may be seated, and may God add His blessing to the reading of His word. Now, Matthew's account of what happened here tells us that the dinner was being held in the home of Simon the leper. Apparently, Jesus had cured him of leprosy. And the dinner was a thank you dinner to get together and honor Jesus and thank Him for what they'd done. Mary was there, and Martha, and Lazarus, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. And in this text, we find out what real thanksgiving looks like. This is not a depiction of a convenient Christianity or a cost-free Christianity. This is a picture of what a grateful, thankful heart really looks like. Sadly, in the lives of too many Christians today, Jesus has a place, but He doesn't have the place. If we're ever going to be the church God wants us to be, we have to be mindful of and grateful for all the blessings of God, realizing that every good and perfect gift comes from Him. Our passage shows us what thanksgiving really looks like. Notice, first of all, the adoration of Mary. This dinner is being held at the home of Simon the leper, and verse 3 tells us that Mary brings some expensive perfume and pours it on the feet of Jesus, and then she wipes His feet with her hair, and the whole house is filled with the fragrance of that perfume. I want you to notice her actions cost something. What she did was spontaneous. It was extravagant. What she did was also very costly. Almost a pound, 16 ounces. Now, this was a fragrant oil, perfume from a plant in eastern India. It was extremely expensive. You know, perfume is still expensive today. You can buy a gallon of gas for just a little over $3. I got gas last night for $3.08. I have a little app on my phone called Gas Buddy, and I keep looking for where the cheap gas is. And if I'm anywhere around it, I will drive. I save a dime per gallon. To me, that's worth it. But you know, you can't buy a gallon of perfume for $3. It's still expensive. Mary had been saving this perfume that was worth a year's wages. Verse 5 tells us, well, how much would that be today? In today's dollars, at $10 an hour, that would be over $21,000 for that one bottle of perfume. Now, we have some of it in our bookstore if you'd like to get that for your wife. No, I'm kidding. I made that up. Verse 7, she had been keeping this perfume for Jesus. Now, I wondered when I read this text, why didn't she use that on her brother Lazarus? Because she kept the best for Jesus. You know, a lot of folks who claim to follow Jesus today don't live that way. In fact, during the holidays, from Thanksgiving to Christmas, is one of the largest times of the year when people make donations of their old stuff. And do you know what beats Goodwill year after year all around the world as the number one place for people to donate their old stuff? The church. People decide they're going to get a new van, so they give the old van to the church. People decide they're going to recarpet their house, so they give the old carpet to the church youth house. And it's donation after donation of stuff they no longer want, and they give that to Jesus. Now, I don't want to, please don't hear me making light of the fact that people want to give to the church. They should. But here's my question. Shouldn't we be giving the church the new van and keeping the old van? Shouldn't Jesus get the best? If we were really thankful and grateful for all the blessings that He gave to us, He would always get the best. Keep that in mind when you're out shopping this holiday season and you're in a store and you're overwhelmed with emotion for a spouse or a child or a parent or an aunt or an uncle, and you just suddenly say to yourself, and it happens to all of us, they deserve this. I'm going to do something nice for them. That's fine. Do all that you want. Just remember, Jesus deserves the best. How hypocritical would it be for me to have a Christmas list that did not include Christ? It's His birthday. Our family for years, ever since we had our first child, over 30 years ago, the largest gift that we give, the largest gift that anyone receives, always goes to Jesus. Always. We want Him to have the best. She gave her best to Jesus. Why? Because she was totally committed to Him. She was willing to give her best only to Jesus. You see, that's the way genuine love is. Genuine love is always costly. John 3:16, God so loved the world. How much is so? He gave His only begotten Son, the Bible says. We used to sing that old hymn, take my life and let it be consecrated, Lord, to Thee. Take my silver and my gold, not a mite would I withhold. Has it cost you anything to serve Jesus lately? Have you given Him your best? Her actions cost something. Verse 3, her actions revealed something. It was an act of honor to anoint the head of a person. Psalm 23, verse 5, the psalmist writes about the good shepherd, you anoint my head with oil. It's an honor. Well, she took the position of a slave. She anointed His feet. And she let her hair down, which was frowned upon by society. She was humbling herself before Jesus. She didn't care what anybody else thought about it. She was thanking Him and worshiping Him. By the way, you can't do one without the other. Did you know that? You can't thank Him without worshiping Him. You can't worship Him without thanking Him. Mary gave the best she had and laid it at the feet of Jesus in an act of worship and thanksgiving. Her actions also produced something. Verse 3, the whole house was filled with the fragrance of her perfume. Everyone was affected by what she did. Now, I want to be clear. She didn't do it for the other people, but the other people were blessed by what she did. She did what she did for Jesus, but other people were blessed by it. Friend, listen, when you do what you do out of love for Jesus, it will always spill over, and other people will get the fragrance of what you've done. You know, this past a week ago, we were at the International Conference on Missions in Kansas City. Over 70 of our people were there. All of our young people who are in Bible college right now training for ministry or missions, they were there. All of our juniors and seniors in high school who are wanting to go into missions or ministry, almost 50 of them from Crossroads. Pretty awesome. Largest group from any church anywhere in the world who came to this convention came from Crossroads. That's pretty awesome. We also took all of our, we took our band and singers, Andy and Lindley and all of the people, and I got to tell you, they did a phenomenal job at this convention. Thousands of people, every service, they did the music, and I'm telling you, it was first class. It was awesome. On Friday night, they asked me to speak, and I'm never nervous here. Never. I'm not. I'm going to India this week. I'm not nervous at all about going to India. When I speak at a conference or a convention, I get nervous. I can't explain it to you. I just get nervous. I was walking around backstage, this huge stage area in this huge auditorium, and my youngest daughter, Kelly, who was watching one of my grandsons, she goes, "Dad, are you okay?" And I go, "Why?" She goes, "You look sick." I wanted to say, "I am." And but I have to tell you, when right before I got ready to preach, all of our musicians and singers, they did this incredible song. And when I walked up the steps, I felt like I was at home, and I was okay. I was great. But you know those missionaries, and many of our missionaries were there, which is pretty cool. They're the cream of the crop of missionaries serving all around the world. Some of them were there. Many of them were there. Some of them weren't. But I was thinking about those missionaries. You know, when those missionaries go to a foreign field, they don't go because they love those people. They don't even know them. You know why they go? You know why they leave everything behind and go someplace where they've never been to minister to people they don't know? They go because of their love for Jesus. But all those people benefit because of their love for Jesus. That's the way it always works. That's why we put a high priority around here on loving Jesus, because there's a fragrance about people who love Jesus and it touches the lives of others. It's the way it's supposed to be. The fragrance of what Mary did not only filled that house, it has filled the whole world. We're talking about it here this morning. Matthew said in Matthew 26:13 that Jesus said, "I tell you the truth, wherever this gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will be told in memory of her." The fragrance of what Mary did that night is still blessing people today. Would you like your life to count like that? Would you like to have that kind of influence and impact long after you're gone? The people would still be talking about you and what you did for Jesus? Well, you got to do something for Jesus first if you want him to talk about it. Well, I wish I could stop right there and give the invitation, we could go home, but I can't, because every place you find the rose, you also find the thorn. And verse 4 introduces to us a well-known character in the Bible named Judas. We've seen the adoration of Mary. Now notice the aggravation of Judas. Verse 4 singles out Judas as the one who's going to betray Jesus. You don't want that on your resume. We name our daughters Mary, but we don't name our sons Judas. We don't even name our dogs Judas, right? Proverbs 10:7 says, "The memory of the righteous will be a blessing, but the memory of the wicked will rot." So here's old Judas Iscariot. And in Judas, we find this world's attitude toward giving thanks to Jesus Christ. First of all, his words are critical. Verse 5. These are the first recorded words of Judas, and they're critical. They're negative. You know, words reveal what's in your heart. Did you know that? Jesus said, "Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks." And his words ruin the beauty of this evening. His words ruin this dinner. Now listen, here's what you need to know. 2 Timothy 3:12 says that everyone who desires to live a godly life in Christ Jesus will be persecuted. You stand up for Jesus. You give your best to Jesus, and the world is going to mock you and make fun of you and criticize you and try to discourage you. They don't know him like we know him. That's why. They don't understand what total commitment and all-out consecration to Jesus Christ is all about. They don't know that. So Judas is critical. And by the way, did you know criticism is contagious? We were at the Chicago O'Hare Airport last Sunday night, and it was miraculous. I got home about 7 minutes after midnight, so I actually spent the first birthday in my life away from all of my family. And it was not fun. In fact, when we were in the car driving from Milwaukee to Chicago in those storms that were unbelievable. I mean, I saw cloud formations I didn't even know existed. Wind was blowing and rain was blowing. There wasn't a whole lot of people on the highway because they were smart enough not to be doing what we were doing. And we kept going. And when they told me my flight had been canceled, Doug Crozier was sitting next to me. I was sitting in that car, and I'm telling you, in the split second, it was, I'm going home and I'm not traveling ever again. That's it. I'm done. I didn't say it out loud, but I said it in my heart. And we kept talking to the people at American, and I said, "Ma'am, isn't there some way you can get me on an earlier flight?" She goes, "I found one." I go, "Great. It's at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning." "No, ma'am, you don't understand. I know it's no big deal to anybody else, but it's my birthday, and I'd like to be with my family." Sir, I'm sorry. There are not going to be any more flights going out. And we drove a little farther, and Doug said, call him back. By the way, Doug had already gotten us 2 hotel rooms to stay there that night. This was like at 1:30 in the afternoon. And got on the phone. She said, I found an earlier flight for you. I go, when is it? 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. No. Finally got me one like at 8 o'clock that night, and that was a whole mess. And anyway, we're sitting there in the Admiral's Club, and I said to Doug, good thing you're with me today. He said, why is that? And I said, because I'd already made up my mind. I was done traveling. I was going to go home. I'm not going anyplace. I'm not going to miss anything with my family. All because these storms had come in, unknown storms, unprojected storms that just took over the whole Chicago area. But we tried to be positive. We tried to be a blessing to people. We tried to love people. But anyway, we were leaving the Admiral's Club, and we're on the elevator, and Doug starts sneezing. And listen, folks, sometimes you just got to be, I know some of you are going, did he say that? Listen, you have to be proud of the things I don't say. Because we're on the elevator, and he starts sneezing, and I see these other people looking at him, and we're on the elevator going down. And so right as the doors open, I turned to Doug, and I said, now you're only contagious for 3 more days, right? You should have seen their face. It was priceless. It was priceless. Criticism is contagious. Matthew tells us the other disciples joined in too. They picked up on what Judas had said. They said, why are we wasting this? Some people are wart inspectors. They are garbage collectors. They specialize in looking for trash and finding the negative in everything. Stay away from people like that. Find something to praise. Find something to bless the Lord for. Find something to be thankful for. Find something to be positive about. Find something good. There's always good. By the way, the old proverb says you can always find dirt in everyone's backyard. That's true, but you can always find good too. I've found that in life, you'll generally find whatever it is you're looking for. So look for the good. Don't let some Judas suck you into a lifestyle of complaining and criticizing everything. Find something good. His words are critical. His words are judgmental, verse 5. He's passing judgment. In fact, in Matthew 26, verse 8, Matthew writes that Judas said, why this waste? Now remember, she had put this perfume on Jesus. And now here's one of Jesus' disciples saying, why this waste? Friend, listen, nothing you and I ever do for Jesus is a waste. It's never a waste of time. It's never a waste of resources. It's never a waste. Well, Judas, he's got a bad perspective. You know why? It was all about the money. It always was. Judas had dollar signs for eyes and deposit boxes for hands. It was all about the money. What's it going to cost? Why this waste? You know, there are a lot of people like Judas in our world. Even in the church from time to time. You know, several years ago, they spent $1 billion, over $1 billion on that big stadium up in Arlington. Now it's called AT&T Stadium. They're making more money off of it because AT&T is paying to have their name on it. $1 billion. And you know, no one's criticizing that. Have you seen anything in the paper about that? Have you heard anybody complain about, well, I can't believe they spent all that money on that? No, you know what people talk about? What an incredible place to see a football game. And I'd agree. I've seen a football game there, a couple of them. Neither one of them did I enjoy. The team I was rooting for, both of them lost. So I'm not going back. That's it. People say, what a great place to see a concert. And it's a wonderful venue. And it's wonderful. But listen, you decide to build a $15 million children's building or a $15 million youth building. And suddenly people criticize that. Do you realize that that children's building that we're building is 1.5% of 1 billion? Now, friends, that's just good stewardship. In fact, I would submit to you this morning that what's going to take place in that new children's building and what's going to take place in that new youth building we're building will far outstrip what takes place in that big building up in Arlington, because lives will come to know Jesus Christ. But it's amazing how people say, well, that money should be given to the poor. That money should go to missions. And it all sounds so spiritual, but like Judas, it's not. It's about them. Why this waste? His words are hypocritical. Verse 6, he didn't care about the poor. He was a thief. He used to steal from the Lord's treasury. In fact, he used some of those funds to buy a field where he would later hang himself. The world is full of hypocritical Judases who sound spiritual, but just like Judas, it's not because they care for the poor or whatever excuse they use, it's because they're not right with Jesus. John 17:12, Jesus referred to Judas as the one doomed to destruction. The King James Version says, the son of perdition. Literally in the original language, it means the son of waste. Friend, listen, if you want to really waste your life, just live it for yourself and the things of this world. And people will say after you're gone, what a waste. What a waste. Thirdly, notice the affirmation of Jesus. Verse 7, words of protection. Verse 7, he says, leave her alone. I love that. Jesus said, leave her alone. Words of praise. Matthew 26:13, Jesus said, truly I say to you, wherever this gospel is proclaimed in the whole world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her. Now apparently Mary was the only one who got it. Out of all the disciples, she had spent time at the feet of Jesus. She'd listened to what he said. She knew he was going to die, but she knew something else too. And that's why she didn't wait until he died to anoint him with this perfume. Dr. John Phillips said, and I quote, Mary of Bethany seems to have been the only one who believed the truth of the resurrection. You won't find her at the cross or at the tomb, nor was it cowardice or despair that kept her away. You'll find Mary, the Lord's mother, at the cross. You'll find Mary Magdalene at the tomb. You'll find Mary, the mother of James and Joseph, at the cross and at the tomb, but not Mary of Bethany. She had not the slightest need to be at either place. She was already standing on resurrection ground. End of quote. She wasn't going to wait. You know, I run into people all the time and say, well, you know, I can't wait to get to heaven. And we're just going to praise and honor the Lord and love him. And it just for all eternity, it's going to be awesome. And, you know, I always want to say, you know, that is great, but why don't you do something now? Why wait till then? Well, I got so many other things going on. You know, I got a schedule, and I mean, if you saw my to-do list and man, my calendar, I mean, they're just, you know. Does Jesus have a place or the place? How thankful are we? Words of priority, verse 8. Jesus said, you will always have the poor with you, but you will not always have me. Now, Jesus is not saying here that we shouldn't help the poor. In fact, Deuteronomy 15:11 says there will always be poor people in the land. Therefore, I command you to be open-handed toward your brothers and toward the poor and needy in your land. Here's what you need to know. All the poverty reduction programs in the world, as wonderful as they are not going to eliminate poverty and poor people from the land. They'll always be here. Jesus said that. And in Matthew 25, verses 35 to 40, Jesus taught we ought to help the poor. But here in John 12, he's talking about priorities. You can help the poor continually. But you have an opportunity to do something right now you'll never have again, to totally commit and consecrate your life to me, Jesus says. And that's what Mary did. Listen, when the opportunity comes to do something for Jesus, you better do it while the opportunity is there. Take advantage of the opportunity to do it. Take advantage to be grateful and to be thankful. Because the day will come sooner than you know when you won't be able to do that anymore. I wonder this morning, what do you and I have to be thankful for? We could start with our life, our next breath, the fact that there aren't 6 inches of ice all over the roads. I mean, there's a number of things we could be thankful for. What are you thankful for this morning? 3 weeks ago, on November 2nd, up in Indianapolis, a man named Tim Bowers had an experience that would change his life forever. You may have heard about it. In fact, the article that I'm holding in my hand says, Tim Bowers got to decide for himself whether he wanted to live or die. When the avid outdoorsman was badly hurt Saturday in a hunting accident, doctors said he would be paralyzed and could be on a ventilator for life. His family had a unique request. Could he be brought out of sedation to hear his prognosis and decide for himself what he wanted to do? Tim Bowers was 32 years old, just got married in August, and was expecting their first child, he and his wife, Abby. The last thing he wanted to be was in a wheelchair, Abby told the Indianapolis Star. To have all that stuff taken away would probably be devastating. He would never be able to give hugs, to hold his baby. We made sure he knew that so he could make a decision. Even if he decided the other thing, the quality of life would have been very poor. His life expectancy would be very low. You see, the 32-year-old man was deer hunting when he fell 16 feet from a tree and suffered a severe spinal injury that paralyzed him from the shoulders down. Doctors thought he might never breathe on his own again. We just asked him, do you want this? His sister said, and he shook his head emphatically, no. His sister is a nurse in a Las Vegas hospital. She has seen this many, many times in her job, and her medical training meant that she understood the severity of her brother's injuries. His C3, C4, and C5 vertebrae were crushed. Though his brain was not injured, his body was irreparably broken. Surgery might be able to fuse the vertebrae, but that would only allow him to sit up. He might be able to live, but he could never walk. Couldn't hold his baby. He might live the rest of his life in a rehabilitation hospital, only kept alive by machines. So they woke him up, and when they woke him up and he came to, they told him, they said, Tim, you thought you went hunting, but you never did. You apparently stepped on a branch and it broke, and you fell and you've broken your back. And they asked him, here's the prognosis, and do you want to live? And like that. And he was shaking his head, and he was trying to say something. They said, well, the doctor said they can pull the tube out, but if they do, they're not sure how long you can live. And he said he wanted it out, and so they took the tube out, and he began to speak to his family. You know what he said? She said, I remember hearing him saying so many times that day, he loved all of us, and he was thankful he'd lived a great life. At one point, he was saying, I'm ready, I'm ready. And here's the sentence that really stopped me. The last 5 hours of Bauer's life were spent with family and friends, about 75 of whom who gathered in the hospital waiting room where they prayed and sang songs. They prayed and sang songs. Now here's my point. If Tim Bowers and his family could be thankful, there's no reason why any of us can't be thankful too and grateful. Don't forget Thanksgiving. Let's pray.